Imagine a man facing the death penalty who has waited for 30 years to be exonerated, only to request a waiver of his appeal and rights, which paves the way for voluntary execution. Is that a cry for justice or help masked as consent? We all have opinions about capital punishment, but a person choosing to volunteer for execution carries with it a lot of questions, such as ethics, mental health, and legal responsibility. For the legal justice system, it is the moment to reflect on the underlying reasons for such requests instead of relying upon shortcuts to close the case. As a person that is passionate about reforming the criminal justice system, I have undertaken the research that has proved that voluntary execution is not only problematic, but also very dangerous. My focus today is to explain why it should not be allowed by exploring its impact on mental health, legal justice, and ethical governance. Voluntary executions often stem from poor mental health, such as a depression or bipolar disorder. According to the 2022 NPR.org podcast about the hidden toll of working on prison execution, most inmates who have volunteered for executions have a history of struggling with mental health issues. The statement indicates that volunteering for death may be more about escaping suffering than accepting the punishment. However, when we look at the overcrowded nature of our American prisons, it becomes possible to understand why such bizarre requests for voluntary executions become acceptable. While it seems theoretical, there have been efforts to decongest American prisons using various strategies such as opting for rehabilitation and job training programs to reduce recidivism. These have been working to achieve the set goals. However, in this case, voluntary execution as an option in decongesting the prisons is unethical because it violates the right to life. But mental health is not the only concern. There is also the issue of fairness and justice. The act of voluntary execution undermines the legal system's integrity. The legal system mainly exists to prevent wrongful convictions and make amends. There are many cases in the American court system where inmates have been exonerated after many years due to new evidence that proves their innocence. According to the Death Penalty Information Systems report of 2025, since 1973, there are many cases in the American court system where inmates have been exonerated after many years due to new evidence that proves their innocence. According to the Death Penalty Information Center's report of 2025, since 1973, at least 200 people who were wrongly convicted and sentenced to death in the U.S. have been exonerated. If these inmates had chosen voluntary execution before their exonerations, their deaths would have been considered wrongful. Moreover, such deaths should not and would not have been accounted for, which makes the legal system seem unfair and incompetent. The highest possibility is that such new evidence would have remained unexposed to the public for fear of compromising the integrity of the legal justice system. For that reason, the system has to ensure thorough investigations and prevent such voluntary execution requests by keeping the inmate informed about the case progress to eliminate the development of mental health issues. Alongside legal and psychological concerns, we must consider what voluntary execution means for our moral and societal values. The government must protect its citizens' lives, which through voluntary executions becomes undermined. Imagine a government that instead of protecting life, facilitates death. As such, it becomes believable that Sato and Alexander, in their study, state-sanctioned killing of sexual minorities, looking beyond the death penalty, refer to state-sanctioned suicide as complicity instead of consent. A government that engages in such complicity opens suicide as complicity instead of consent. Pause. A government that engages in such complicity opens doors for policies that devalue vulnerable lives. Then how can we trust such a government to protect us? It is a situation that calls for us to advocate against voluntary executions due to the doubt that inflict on the masses about the responsibility of the government towards their safety and well-being. Those with family members in prison facing the death penalty can also talk to them to see the broad picture about making such requests and foster empowerment and hope among them. Now that we have explored the psychological, legal, and ethical concerns, let us revisit why this issue matters. We have seen that voluntary execution is dangerous due to its roots in mental illness, its threat to the justice system, and its ethical contradictions. Voluntary execution should not be allowed because mass suffering short circuits justice and challenges our collective moral responsibilities. We all have a role to play in preventing such scenarios. However, the government's role is not to give up on its most vulnerable citizens. It is to uphold justice and dignity for all, even in the darkest corners of our prison systems. We can all agree that we are safe when true justice prevails. Thank you for listening.